This side Rahul Magan here is the Chief Executive Officer of Treasury Consulting Pte Limited, which is a Singaporean multinational group. And today we would be covering a very dedicated topic on custodians leveraging credit risk. As you very well understand that Treasury Consulting LLP is a multi-dimensional company, and we are doing a lot of things, a lot of new things which we are doing. In fact, we have our hands in almost 44 business domains of the globe. So there are roughly 44 business domains in which we have our hands, and we are continuously expanding it. We are expanding our workforce and so on and so forth. One of the areas of expansion is the custodians leveraging credit risk. In this, we are going to talk about something which you will generally not find in the books, rather on the internet also. This is something only a professional can tell you. The examples in this video is just for the sake of examples. They may or might not have a relevance in a practical sense. This is only for the sake of example. Like Treasury Consulting, in majority of the videos are only quoting example for the sake of reference. Generally, the tendency for custodian is that a custodian is a person who will take a custody of the security, and using this custody he generates some fees. So example, sometimes the fees is 1 basis point, 2 basis point, 3 basis points. So generally they generate the fees. But unfortunately, majority of the people do not understand, or they do not want it to understand, that the treasury is a function where custodians play a very important role. In the sense, like treasury function of a custodians play a very important role. And like generally also it's being said that if a treasury function of a company or a corporate or a bank is pretty good, then in the longer tenure things turning out to be pretty good. The more or less the same is the scene which we have the custodians also. In this, we are going to be taking an example how two different custodians are acting at a same point of time and covering almost the same client. And in this client, they are taking the different positions, whereby one client, one custodian is taking both positions, which is deliverable and naked position, while another custodian is taking a deliverable position. So in this example, we are taking two custodians again for the sake of example. One is a Goldman Sachs custody service in New York, and one is a State Street in Singapore. I hope both needs no introduction. As far as the client is concerned, we are taking an example of a client which again requires no introduction, which is Vanguard, the largest mutual fund of the globe. Now, Vanguard is a client who hold $1.2 trillion of securities, assuming. And out of $1.2 trillion, Vanguard decided to go ahead with the two different custodians. Because of course you always wanted to diversify your risk. You never wanted to have only one risk, never wanted to play with the one custodian. You always wanted to have two custodians in place. So Vanguard decided that they go ahead with Goldman Sachs and they go ahead with State Street. Now I don't think that Vanguard as a name needs any introduction. Of course, when we are saying Vanguard and when we are saying $1.2 trillion, Vanguard is subject to have two things which is unsaid, which is short-term line of credit and securities lending and repurchase agreement. I hope you being through a video. In a short-term line of credit, Vanguard is able to basically to neutralize the market movement. So if there is a redemption activity which is happening in the market, something which is beyond the control of Vanguard, Vanguard can come in the market and take the money from Goldman Sachs and also from State Street, and basically able to pay to the customer those who are asking without redeeming. On the contrary, if the market is going pretty strong, Vanguard can take, and they don't have the funds to invest, Vanguard can take the funding from both of these custodians that they can invest. In a short-term line of credit, in a security lending and repurchase agreement, it's opposite. Whereby Vanguard wanted to have a funding and they are ready to pledge the security. I repeat, they are ready to pledge the security, but they are not ready to change the ownership. So it is just a collateral. So ownership will not change, it is just a collateral. So in this, how exactly would happen? They will lend to somebody these securities, and at maturity they will pay the money back and they will get their securities. But in either of the cases, both the custodians, Goldman Sachs as well as State Street, would have an issue, and the issue is the credit risk. What would if Vanguard default? What would if the securities on Vanguard invested, they default? What would both? or what would, in case of security lending and repurchase agreement, basically the lender with whom they have pledged it, he himself default, what would happen? There are a lot of issues before custodians. So how a custodian would be doing in that sense? Custodians here will start with the scratch. Goldman Sachs is taking a credit spread, basically a credit position on the quantum which Vanguard has placed. This, in that sense, they are the CDS buyer. And assuming the CDS seller is the JP Morgan Chase. You must be thinking that if Goldman is a CDS buyer, then why JP Morgan is a CDS seller? It is a market boss. Today, Indian rupee is 67.60. You have people like me, those who are saying it will go to 75. You have people, those who will say it will touch down to 58. It's a view. Only the time will tell who would be right. Similarly here, they are taking a position on the security which Vanguard has taken a custody, because on these securities, Vanguard being given short-term line of credit as well as a security lending and repurchase agreement. Before moving further, let me repeat you that we are using a very big name, Vanguard. So if you are thinking that you have a custody of $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, and you wanted to have that kind of stuff from any custodian, then boss, this will never happen. As simple as that. This will never happen, because custodians, they will only give that facility to whom they think, and those who are the pretty big name in the system. Now here they are paying an annual spread of L plus 20, which is an annual premium, and ultimately they are getting a protection. Since this is a single name CDS, we are assuming that the security which Vanguard has placed, it's only one kind of security. So this would be physically settled. Now we need to appreciate one fact very carefully, that CDS having a lot of principles. If you are dealing with a single name CDS, it has to be physically settled. If you are dealing with a multi-name CDS, it has to be cash settled. Please note very carefully. So reverse is not possible. A multi-name cannot be physically settled, and single name cannot be cash settled. So single name is always physically settled. Since we are assuming that they are dealing with a single name, so it has to be physically settled. Now Goldman Sachs as a custody is, we all know that after 2008, which is AUC, asset under custody, has went to a tremendous level. If I go with the top two custodians of the globe, which is State Street and Northern Trust, they together have more than $52 trillion of securities in the custody. But if I look at their bottom line, basically how much money they are generating, which is a fee they are generating out of it, the fees is pretty negligible. So on paper you have $52 trillion of a custodian asset. The fee which you are generating is pretty negligible, because the competition has risen, because the Ryzen Hub, the regulatory has also invoked like fundamental review of trading book, like MiFID II, pre-trade, post-trade, and there are so many things which we have which have eaten up their margin. Here I am not supporting them that they should not have the regulatory in place. And not to mention, these custodians are sparing a handsome amount of money on operational risk also, which is a very important risk. I do not want to name the bank, but we had several banks from 2008 till now, those who being reported in the newspaper due to the operational inefficiencies. They never being reported for default. They never being reported they not been able to pay. Due to the operational inefficiencies, they being reported number of times. So similarly like that, here Goldman Sachs is paying LIBOR plus 20 basis point. Now you must be thinking that why Goldman is paying, what is the benefit to them? The benefit is that they are secured that if in either of the case, which is short-term line of credit and securities lending and repurchase, if anything would have happened, Goldman Sachs is secured. But as the profits are shrinking, Goldman wanted to make money, and there is nothing wrong in that. You have huge amount of people in the market, those who are thinking that Treasury is nothing but a cost center. If custodians, the investment banks will continue to believe on that theory, I would tell you they would be bankrupt. Now what Goldman Sachs do? Goldman Sachs will wait for an opportunity to hit. What is that opportunity? Seriously, something happened either to Vanguard or to the securities on which the Goldman Sachs wanted to take up, those Goldman already have a protection at L plus 20. Either of that or might be both. These, the level, the credit spread has widened up to L plus 80. Now it is a opportunity for Goldman. There are many people, those who are thinking that why again I am referring to Goldman here. This is an opportunity for Goldman. And here comes the second custodian. Previously we discussed that Goldman is having a security of Vanguard which they hedged at L plus 20. Now due to any issues pertaining to Vanguard or securities, or might be both, the same level of security, this the credit spread risen to L plus 80. Now Goldman will come in the market and do the CDS selling. Previously they were paying, now they sold, they would be receiving. I know that there is a question that come to your mind that what if these this L plus 80 touch down to L plus 180, might be L plus 280 and maybe more than that. Yes, I am fully with you. I take your point. I do not have any second opinion. In this kind of trades, there is a one risk which Goldman is taking. There are, actually this is not a risk if you ask from a Goldman perspective. Goldman is saying, first of all, this risk is known as CDS. This risk is known as CDS cap risk, CAP. Cap stands for the cap, like the cap you have on the bottles. It's a risk which is known as CDS cap risk. Now what Goldman would be doing in that? Goldman will wait for a right position to come, and according to Goldman that 80 bips is the maximum limit it would have reached. After 80 maximum it will go to 90, but it has to come down. Of course we need to appreciate that even the best hedge funds of the globe, they did so many trades effective 2008 which went into losses. I'm not here indemnifying Goldman and saying that whatever trade they did is absolutely right. But yes, there is an underlying in that. And now in this underlying, the underlying is that if it will touch down to 180 and maybe if it is come down to below 80, then Goldman would lose an opportunity of 100 bips. That risk Goldman has to take. So nobody can indemnify that risk on behalf of Goldman Sachs. That is quite clear. But in any consideration, we assume that Goldman is ready to take that risk, and Goldman sold the CDS at L plus 80. Now here, once they sold the CDS to L plus 80, CDS to L plus 80, on the contrary, the Straight Street wanted to have, which is another custodian, who wanted to buy the CDS. Why they wanted to buy the CDS? Quite clear. Because they would also have a client Vanguard, and they are quite serious that the spreads are rising, they should hedge that. Or maybe if they don't want to hedge the Vanguard, they wanted to hedge another client. So there is a buyer and there is a seller. Now seller is here and the buyer is here, it's a wind up. Now the net profit, now in this deal, we know that Vanguard is the largest mutual fund of the globe, they would never wind up. That is fact which is given in writing. The maximum what could happen, the securities which they have created in the market, they could have winded up. But don't be worried about that. Now in this, what exactly would happen? Goldman Sachs would be created a CDS delta, which you mentioned here. In this, they would be making the present value on L plus 80, because they sold it. While they would be paying L plus 20, the net would be CDS delta. CDS delta is credit default spread delta. This is a very, very efficient techniques. Most of the bank custodians are doing. BNP Paribas, JP Morgan Chase, DBS, Citi, Standard Chartered, and we have multiple banks, HSBC. Predominantly custodians are two types. One is the non-bank custodian and one is the bank custodian. Non-bank custodians are subject to huge amount of I would say huge amount of regulations. On the other hand, the bank custodians also have regulation, and it's sometimes quite heavier. But bank custodians have one leverage in place which non-bank custodians do not have, is that bank custodian can either be a seller in CDS or they can be buyer in the CDS at the same point of time. In this first case, Goldman Sachs is a deliverable position. Here it is a non-deliverable position which is known as naked position, and this is how the treasury of custodians are working, which is a beautiful example. In case you have any question, you are welcome To contact us, my mobile is 9899242978. My Skype ID is Rahul5327. My email rahul.magan@treasuryconsulting.in. Our platform www.fixedincome.global. Our website www.treasuryconsulting.in. At the end, Treasury Consulting is now a player in Custodian, and this is not the end. There are a lot of practical videos which are on the way. We are moving towards 550 videos, and hopefully by end of July we would be, maybe by mid of July we would be able to touch that benchmark. We are no way going to relax, and we're going to add a lot of videos. In case you have any requirement, you are most welcome to visit our platform www.fixedincome.global, and we surely be helping you out. Thank you and have a wonderful time ahead. Thank you.